Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner II, Team Leader Champions Real Estate Team. Joining me today is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. So if you joined us before, you know we kind of jump on Wednesday afternoon, lunch hour time frame, depending on what we got on our schedule for both of us, and just kind of talk about what's going on in the real estate market in the last week. So we'll jump straight into it. And also we did have a question that came in since our last video of last Wednesday. So we'll touch on that in regards once we get rolling here, kind of get over our normal stuff we go over here. So we got the housing markets over the last 7 days. We've had 505 new listings go live. We had 357 new contracts written, so pending houses, and 475 sold homes. So some happy new homeowners out there. So our listings are up a little bit as far as new listings. I mean, that's pretty common to see, once their kids are, back to school and everyone's kind of settled down a little bit. Hopefully going to get their schedules online and get used to the new, normal, not the summer hours, with different activities and obviously school and such. So now they're ready to get their house on the market and get rocking and rolling. Ultimately, we have Labor Day coming up in 2 weeks here. That's usually that weekend usually hit or miss on as far as activity, because obviously you have people going on vacations, you have, hanging out with family and stuff and all that good stuff. But it just depends on, over my 13, 14 years in the business, been around it all my life. With my parents being in the business growing up. So it's depending on, sometimes you have people coming into town to look at houses on holiday weekend because it's extended weekend. They can have that extra Monday to go look at houses. So it just depends. But usually we see a little uptick here as schedules kind of get normaled out, from a new listing standpoint of it. But we're still seeing fairly good activity in there. The new contracts written is kind of about where we've been over the last couple of weeks. So the activity level hasn't really changed too much. Like we talked on in videos beforehand, I feel like we're seeing a little more normalized market right now. The intensity is kind of slowed down just a little bit, but still a very good opportunity to buy and sell with regards to that. So we'll take a look at the 30,000 foot view here. Let me add that new graphic here. So 30,000 foot view is basically Omaha and Lincoln MLS here. So we have just over 2,300 homes. We had, I think, 2299 last week. So not much change. With regards to that, in the Douglas and Sarpy County area, we have 1,343 active listings. Breaking that down a little bit into smaller chunks, we have 576 existing homes. That's just it's doubled from what we were seeing at the beginning of the year when we were lucky when we got to 250. So there's a decent chunk of change out there to take a look at. New construction, 767. So that was one of the questions that got brought up since a previous video we did with the new construction. We'll touch on that in just a second. Our months of inventory, obviously, as our activity goes down a little bit, our months of inventory go up, just kind of the supply demand aspect of it. So what the month supply means is if no other houses came on the market after today, we'd have 1.4 months of supply before we ran out. So average sold price, not much change from the previous weeks. So we're up 13% from last year at this time. So, but like I touched on, as we're going through that little slide, is just new construction. So I had a question, just kind of what's going on new construction side of it. So, lumber prices and things of that sort, material prices. We're not necessarily seeing prices overall come down from a cost to build those new construction houses. Yes, lumber prices peaked, I think, right around the 1,300 mark. I think they're down to right around 500, 600 in their measurements as far as their costs. From that perspective. So yes, lumber prices have come down, and they ebb and flow just like everything else out there. But we've also seen other increases in other material costs, talking to other agents that represent builders, and just kind of what they're seeing. Activity is pretty decent at this time. Agents that are in my mastermind group that represent the builders as well, they have seen more spec homes come on the market. So basically what that means is a builder starts a home. Maybe it was a custom at one point. People picked everything out. And I think what we saw too is those people, if you're thinking about it, were 8 months out from the first of the year. The peak of new construction, the number 1 and 2 months of pending sales for new construction historically are that February, March time frame, basically because they want to get the house done. Historically, usually only used to take 8 to 9 months to build a house, and that would put you right about the start of school. So a lot of times you get people after the holidays, they go meet with builders and get the ground, ready to rock, and they can build throughout the summer. They're usually in that August, September time frame. Well, now with the supply chain things that we've seen, that's pushed back to, that 12 months, even a little bit longer, depending on the builder and how many houses they build, and if they got a process in place that's going to, alleviate some of that time frame. So what we did see is those people that were, getting the houses, getting the contracts written beginning of the year, all of a sudden now come up, and if they did not lock their interest rate, and rates went from 3%, 5.5 to 6 potentially, they ultimately, unfortunately, may not have qualified for those homes. So we may have seen some of those homes. One of the agents in my mastermind reps, they had, I think he said 6 in our mass meeting, I think 2 weeks ago. He goes, hey, we're gonna have 6 spec homes coming back on the market just because financing fell through. They're great houses, and and that's an opportunity for somebody that's, hey, they're kind of looking, not finding what they want in the existing market, can go into the new construction, get into a house, maybe a month out from being done, and you can get into that brand new house and a new subdivision and all that kind of fun stuff. So, from a new construction perspective, like, kind of similar to the existing market, the intensity isn't there. I don't necessarily see prices going crazy high, but I don't believe that they're going to be coming down just because land costs are going up. There's a lot of other aspects that go into it than just your lumber and your carpet and your drywall and your roofing and all that kind of fun stuff. There's a lot of other, factors that play into it, but that just kind of, we could go into a whole little talk about it, but that's just kind of the basis of, what we're seeing on the new construction side. Houses, there's a lot of, if you just drive down, Highway 70 or Highway 31 going in between Elkhorn and Gretna, there's a lot of dirt getting turned over out there for ultimately commercial projects and obviously residential projects out there. So we're going to see obviously another influx of lots and development coming on the market here in the next year or so as those get built out. And ultimately, depending on the supply chain, I think most builders have, accommodated for those aspects of it. Are builders going back to those buyers? If those, I don't necessarily I think they've kind of addressed some of those items in the contract. If, prices were to spike, they kind of protect themselves, because ultimately the builder's not going to take when they first, after the pandemic aspect of it, where they're $30,000, $20,000, the builder's not going to take that hit, and if that buyer's unwilling to come up with that money or whatever, they'll just put the house back on the market, and sell it and sell it at the market value, essentially, from that perspective of it. But so I guess we can get down a fun rabbit hole going over all the new construction of it. But if you have any other questions, we love those questions coming in. We're happy to answer them and go over them. And if you want to talk about them individually, feel free to give me a holler. Give Russ a holler if it's a financial side of it anytime. So I guess we'll jump right into with Russ here on kind of, what he's seeing with the new construction, just rates from a new construction side of it, what the rate lock programs look like, because that's more his forte. They're 6 month, 9 month, 12 month, and obviously the farther you go out, the may have more cost to lock those rates at a longer point. So how are we doing, Russ?
Interest rates are up just a little bit from where they were last week, and we expect a little bit of volatility. This week's kind of a big week as far as news goes, Mark. Certainly every Thursday we have the initial jobless claims reports, and everybody's been watching that fairly closely every week. If we see unemployment numbers start to rise, jobs are the last thing that falls before we're officially in a recession. And everybody knows we had a strong jobs report for the month of July that's released on the first Friday of every month. Of course, we're waiting for next week, the week after, to find out what the new jobs report will be. But so far, we've been seeing a mild increase in initial jobless claims, but it hasn't been anything alarming yet. So we don't know if we're in a recession yet, and typically recessions point to lower rates. Having said that, to your point, Mark, anytime that an interest rate is locked, it doesn't make any difference whether it's an existing home where you're wanting to close in 20, 30, 50 days, whatever it might be, or new construction. That rate is being hedged, if you will, with what we call the secondary market. You've heard things like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which means that we've committed that we are going to deliver that loan to the secondary market. Well, certainly if we are going to deliver a loan in the next, let's just say 3 weeks, maybe a 20-day lock, it's pretty common that we're going to likely see better terms than we would see on a rate that's locked for example, 6 months. And the reason for that is there's a bond investor on the other side of that transaction that we have to anticipate what that bond investor might pay for that bond. So the longer of a lock that we need, the higher the risk that we might see rate fluctuations. And so as a result, interest rates on long-term locks are usually going to result in some sort of a fee or an additional bump to the interest rate up front to cover the exposure, the risk, if you will, of that hedge. So Many of those long-term locks will have a feature where if the rates do improve, you can always unlock and relock at the better rate once you're within a certain number of days before the property is completed. So a lot of builders are very hesitant to recommend a lock. And part of the reason for that, Mark, is exactly what you mentioned earlier. Folks that are beginning to build in February, March, and April, in the past, that home might have been done by August, September, October. And in today's world, it's not uncommon, depending upon the builder and the price point, that build could take a year, year and a half. And so it can be very difficult to make sure that we've locked that rate for a long enough period of time to take into account those supply chain disruptions or even labor disruptions to know when that property will be completed. For those of you that are watching the video that are building new construction, you know that the builder likely isn't giving you a closing date until you're relatively close. And the reason for that is something beyond the builder's control. They have to make sure they can get those laborers as well as the materials onto the property. It's not a case of them having everything needed to build your house in a warehouse somewhere. They have to order it, have it received in. And so it can be a very tricky thing and difficult thing, especially when we're seeing supply chain breakdowns. But there are long-term locks available. But again, if we do see a recession, which we may or may not already be in one, historically we see interest rates improve a little bit. But it makes sense to talk with Mark and his team, or to give me a call, and be happy to walk through the different options and make sure that you have all the information to make the best decision for you.
Yeah, because I just had a transaction here recently, a couple of weeks ago, that I had the buyer was buying the house, the seller was building a house, and when we wrote the contract, a month out, they didn't know what their closing date was. And typically they used to be able to give you almost at a drywall phase. They used to, okay, hey, here's our timeline. We have everything, pegged in what we got everything going. And I was talking to that agent. I'm like, hey, when are we going to know, ultimately, so the buyer can coordinate movers, and that seller's got to coordinate movers. So there's a lot of moving pieces in there. And, that agent, she basically was just like, she goes, Mark, my builder now does not give a closing date until flooring materials have been dropped at the house. And so that's one of the last things to go in is your carpet, and so that's only a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, less than 2 to 3 weeks before that's going to be in. So that puts a lot of pressure on everybody, to ultimately, work together to, coordinate something in that manner, because the lender's got to know, the title's got to know, the appraiser's got to get in there, on both sides of it, to get that done. So that is something that, just they have those things to navigate. Unfortunately, because they've that agent, she goes, we've set a closing date. They said the carpet was in stock at the supplier, which their computers weren't up to date, and that stuff was not in stock. And so it was another, a couple more weeks after what they had set, which, everyone sets their movers and lenders, everyone, everyone's ready to rock. And then all of a sudden, the carpet supplier is not there. And I mean, there's just, like you said, there's many spokes in the wheel. When you're building a house or buying a house, it doesn't matter which side of which side you're on. It's just, and us as agents are trying to navigate those waters and make sure that we get as smooth as we can, to the end, and make sure, because it's, like you said, it's out of the builder's control, for the most part. It's out of the agent's control. It's out of the seller, the buyers, and you're kind of at the mercy of whatever supplier sometimes on that new construction side of it. Sometimes it's appliances, because ultimately they have to get a certificate of occupancy before the lender will close on it and they can live in the house. So, the city's not going to give you, or the county's not going to give you a certificate of occupancy unless if it's livable for all intents and purposes. So, but anyways, yeah, appreciate the question coming in. If you have any other questions, shoot us an email, text, whatever way you want to do it. As far as on our social media platforms, we're out there on just about anything out there. So, but appreciate you listening to us. And if you have, like I said, questions, give us a holler. Everyone have a great week. I don't know if Russ, you have anything else you wanted to add or anything?
No. Enjoy the week.
Yeah.
Last week of August.
Yeah, and Husker football's on Saturday. I forgot about that. So for you Husker fans out there, I guess Russ is on the other side of the river, so he's kind of out that black and gold and stuff. So, anyways, but we still like you. So, anyways, appreciate everyone listening, and give us a holler if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you next.